This is the stuff that I know you guys have an interest in, and I should also note that we've talked about this, I think, the last 2 years, and some things get kicked to the wayside. We actually I'd say for about 10 months this year, we operated with a smaller staff while we had some vacancies that we finally got filled. So hopefully we can devote some time. But the one thing that I'd like to partner with you guys on is doing a marketer survey. In other words, take some of the same questions that we apply to the managing partners and survey you guys. And we keep it anonymous, but it'd be interesting to then write about and publish the results of, okay, here's what the managing partners think, here's what the marketers think. So it's something I know we've talked about, we will get to it. But what we do every year is we ask on a scale of 1 to 12, what are the most effective marketing tools and what are the least effective? And in terms of so this year we have a new number 1. You've heard me say a couple years, for several years, cold calling has been number 1. And it just blows me away. But this year it's not. In terms of number 1 score, the top 5 were client surveys, which is also interesting because I don't think I noted I think I noted in here a little bit later. It's interesting that that's noted as the number 1 marketing tool, and yet overwhelmingly, most of the people who did the survey don't use client surveys, which is, again, something I say every year, something that everybody that I talk to in the industry says is a huge mistake. And as I've mentioned before, and I'll mention a little bit later, like talking to GCs, I ask about client surveys, they say, hey, look, if they're not going to give them to us, we're going to give them client feedback, whether they want it or not, and then we're going to talk price. So client surveys was number 1, followed by firm website, and firm website is typically pretty high. Cold calling is still in there, branding and entertainment. And as you can see in 2014, it was cold calling, branding, firm website, advertising, and entertaining are the top vote getters. Now, if you look cumulatively, and that's one of the things I look at like who scored between generally between 1 and 3, because that to me gives me a better, I think, gives a better flavor of terms of what people are interested in. And with that, firm website was number 1 with 59% of those saying that, closely followed by branding with 54%. Client surveys had 46%, entertaining 42%, and seminars 40%. In 2013, as you can see from the order, it was seminars, website, client surveys, and entertainment. Which are seen as the least effective? Good sign is that cold calling received the most scores of 12. I would assume you guys would think cold calling is a bad marketing strategy. So, and a good sign that they don't think it's that great. With 52% scored it at 12. Now that was up from last year when it was 42% of the respondents. Interesting, this year advertising was second with 8%. Last year, branding, which was also, it's also interesting, like I said, you've heard me say this, some of the things, both the practice areas and also in terms of marketing strategies, some things there's a lot of volatility between what people think works and what people don't. Sometimes there's like an inverse there. And then third was a tie between branding, brochures, and charitable involvement. And those 3 have been cited consistently in this category in the last several years. And then I'll come down to a note on client surveys. 73% of our respondents, 73%, said they don't use client surveys regularly, and that's up from last year. It was 64% last year, and that's actually higher than 2013 when we had 70%. Since 2011, so with this competitive environment, with so much competition, so much rate pressure, so much concern, with everyone telling you can't get enough, you can't get close enough to your clients, you can't be responsive enough, that number keeps going up. The number seems to keep going up. Since 2011, it's never been lower than 53% of our respondents. And I say it here, I said it again. So to whatever extent, if you don't do them, I would talk. I think we hear it, and maybe you guys have on-the-ground intelligence that contradicts this. But from what I hear, what I sense is that, like I said, I think clients are more likely to change on certain areas and certain things. They're more willing to consolidate or go to some preferred providers than they ever have before. This is built-in intel. And I'm sure there's resistance because partners don't want to either go through the time of it or don't want it or find it uncomfortable or unpleasant. Look, I can tell you in the media industry, I hate focus groups. I hate them. And sometimes you get only the cantankerous people in the focus group. You don't get the people who like what you like. Having said that, there's always valuable intelligence. Even if 90% of what you hear is just griping about stuff you can't change, you'll get 10% that's worth acting upon. So I would just urge you, based on everything I've heard, think about doing some form of client survey and getting that intel from your clients. If anything, just as defense action, if not a way to potentially get more work. So, we had some questions. This was actually from feedback from LMA. What did we do this? 2 or 3 years ago we did.
This is the
Second years we do. And I would also add that if you want us to add, potentially add another question or two to the managing partner survey, in other words, stuff that you want to hear from the managing partners about marketing, talk to us, talk to me, talk to Gina. We'd be willing to consider including it because we want to be a service to the whole legal community, not just the managing partners. But we asked them. 67% said the firm's marketing expenses provided a clear ROI, which was down from last year, but I still think that's a pretty decent number. Last year it was 71% said the firm's marketing expenses provided a clear ROI. Now, however, 2015, this year's survey, 33% said the marketing expenses didn't provide a clear ROI, which was up from the prior year. Not a whole lot, but it's 4%. As you can see, it was 29% last year. Now, then one of the other questions we ask is in terms of subsets of branding, what's the most important? And institutional awareness within the marketplace was seen as the most important, which was the same as last year. However, only 52% chose it this year, which was down from last year. Thought leadership was second with 32%, and as you can see how they fared last year. Interesting one was because I know firms spend so much time sweating over logos, 0%. They did not see it in terms of being a very important thing for the firm. So again, that may be one of those areas where your experience and your interaction with people differs from what the perception is among the managing partners.